Hello and welcome to the ZED world. Every time you have seen heaps of waste in land dumps, you have despaired. You have blamed the government or the city corporation for the state of affairs. One kind of reflection we did about 10 or maybe 12 years ago is that we said that this is not a challenge that the city corporation or the civic amenity provider has to alone worry about. So we asked ourselves where the problems are. Then we began to deconstruct the quantum of waste we all put out as solid waste from our homes and offices. We then looked at the numbers of kgs that emanate or spew out of each of our homes. If you look at it, you actually buy something like 7 kgs of vegetables every week if you're a family of 4. The waste that goes out of your house on an average, even if statistics are sometimes deceptive, is something in the region of 450 grams to 500 grams of all kinds of waste. Typically we have 7 kinds of waste, of which I shall discuss in a moment. But of this 450 to 500 grams, about 70% is wet waste. That will be useful for you to remember. Now, if I take this picture out to a point where you're looking at a city like Bangalore, you will see that we have about 3,500 to 3,700 tons of solid waste that gets spewed out of something like 250 to 300,000 households, houses like yours and mine in the middle and upper middle class and the lower middle class. I'm not even talking, for instance, of the 30% of our population which live in slums, and there is another story there and a challenge that we need to address separately at the level of the corporation. But what can you and I do to ease the situation? If we decided that we will not put our vegetable waste, eggshells, meat, whatever else that you have as wet and degradable waste in your home, into a plastic bag and leave it at our gates, that will be the first step toward providing a solution that will meet what the corporation also needs to be doing. Now, that plastic bag should actually not be something that you can put out there and have the city corporation worry about. Instead, if you decided to buy a small compost bin, which costs no more than 1,200 to 1,500 rupees, and you dump your wet waste into that, you will see then that not only will you have some rich nutrient compost that you can use for your backyard or for your garden, or could give it to your mother-in-law if she has more space and land for her to employ the compost. It would mean that the wet waste from your house then does not go to the grid. And that will mean that of the 3,500 tons, nearly 70% or about 2,000 tons and plus per day is waste that the city corporation does not need to be handling. What else can you do with that wet waste apart from having a compost bin? You could try a vermicompost tank if you have more. Let's say you're an apartment and you have 100 houses. You could then see that this 300 grams into 100 or about 30 kgs of such wet waste is located in a separate yard, and you make rich nutrient compost that you could even sell. The other that you can do is to see that you have a vermicompost tank and put in a bunch of worms. A kilo of worms is typically about 700 such worms, and they multiply hugely, and they take care of the soil. They ensure that you've got your compost, which is the excreta of the worms, which is so rich in terms of its nutrient value that can be served, that can be used in your gardens and such things. The other that you can do if you have an even higher compost level or waste level, wet waste level, is to have a biogas digester. If you had, let us say, 100 houses, you're typically talking, as I said, about 30 kgs. If you had, therefore, 500 houses, you will have about 150 kgs, which means putting up a small biogas digester, which costs no more than 400,000 rupees today, and gives you producer gas, which you can light your gas stoves with at the community center or the clubhouse or some such thing. It can't serve for houses because the calorific value or the quantum of producer gas that comes from 150 kgs or 500 houses is not so large that you can address kitchen gas situation needs. Now look at it another way. There are 7 types of solid waste, broadly speaking, with 70% of all waste being wet waste. Bottles, papers, bags, newspapers, for instance. All this is something that you can sell. When it comes to, for instance, drugs and any chemical-based wastes, you will have to see how you can dispose of it responsibly. Maybe you can call an NGO and see what they want to do with it. And there are enough NGOs right now in cities like Bangalore which are willing to take this and see what they want to do to, dispose of it in landfills and such other situations. The other is plastic and thermocol, which don't degrade for 1,000,000 years, and you need to see again if it can be given for reuse by the industry which makes such materials. The other is clinical waste, like sanitary napkins and so on, or even hospital waste or drugs. I mean, your Band-Aid, such things that sometimes you put out in a house. That doesn't even make for 0.5% of a campus, like say 100 houses. The next is toxic waste like paints, could be cooking oils that you don't know what to do with and sometimes want to put down the drain, which is very dangerous. Or it could be debris, you've broken a wall and you've got some concrete debris or brick debris and you don't know what to do with these things. But remember that while all of these have some decent, viable solutions, your biggest need is to see how you address the treatment of wet waste inside your home or in a collective campus of 50 or 100 houses or whatever residential enclave you live in. There are issues in each of these, but remember, it is not something that is going to actually get you any huge financial return by investing in a small compost bin at 1,500. But what you have done is to see that you have relieved immensely the load of the city corporation. And so you don't have diesel trucks which carry with these stinking heaps of garbage in their trucks right across the city, adding to traffic jams too. What can you do therefore to waste manage in a way that you hold hands with the city corporation?